All right, we are live. How's it going, Nikki?
Hello, hello, hello. Happy to be here. And I think we should have a disclaimer about that music because my headphones almost drove me insane.
Really, the countdown
Yeah,
music?
it's quite loud.
Really? Hmm.
Yeah.
I wonder if I can. I don't think I have any control over that. Maybe I'll have to go back in and edit the source material and turn that down a little bit.
Maybe just add an asterisk on the next to the title.
Exactly.
That works.
Like you have to have like photo sensitive viewer disclaimers. We could also have audio disclaimers.
Exactly.
Um, welcome everyone joining us today to the latest weekly live stream that we've got. Longtime fans of the live stream, because we totally have fans, right? Will recognize the face, I think, over here next to me, probably. Mirrored video here versus what you actually see. But Nikki, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. A lot of you already know me. My name is Nikolai or Niki, or use any other variation of the name. I honestly don't mind. I've heard everything, so feel free to improvise. I'm a solutions engineer at HighGraph. Basically, my work consists of showing potential customers how the product works, brainstorming with them as to where HighGraph could sit in their architecture, how it will actually work, stuff like that. It's quite exciting, but I also get to see a lot of different things. Hence why Bryan asked me to be here today, so we can talk about workflows and how we can shape content in HighGraph.
Exactly, because honestly, most of the time when I'm working with me or just a small set of people, and we don't really need much in the way of approval processes. Even the marketing team for HighGraph doesn't need a huge amount of approval. Like, we go through some phases before we even get into HighGraph, but once it's in there, we're good. So I don't know a whole lot about this feature set, if I'm being honest. I've used it a little bit. So I'm going to need some definite context here. And luckily, I think you have a presentation, right, that you're going to walk us through a little bit here.
Yeah, absolutely. You, by the way, are actually quite right. In a lot of cases, workflows in the CMS are not needed, especially when we're talking about smaller teams, in processes where things usually happen outside of a platform, right? That can be Google Docs. God, the words are escaping my mind today.
It's late in the day for you. It's fine.
Exactly. Like, for me, it's pretty much the end of the day, so I'm excused.
Exactly.
Anyways, it could happen in Google Docs. It could happen in Word. It could happen I've seen it in the Notion page actually several times. So, there are multiple different ways where you can do workflows. However, back in the day when monoliths were a thing, there was this thing introduced in the platforms called content workflows. And the idea there was that everything needs to be concise in the platform itself, so you can have a way to ensure the quality of your content, right? That could be an approval workflow. It can be just driving a particular page through different stages of the content generation, like, let's say, translation, adding a bunch of different enhancements to a particular page, going through different stages of the draft, and so on and so on. The bigger enterprises that we currently work with are still very much in that mindset, where you need to have that way of shaping the content and the path it takes from a draft stage to the publish stage, right? So the idea today is to go through how you would set that up in HighGraph, right? Because out of the box, that's not really a thing. You don't see it directly, but it's actually something that you can shape with the platform, and that's exactly what we're going to do today.
Yeah.
Cool. So first, we're going to talk about stages in HighGraph, what that is, what it means, how we can configure them, after which we're going to jump through to the roles and permissions and what that looks like out of the box and how you can extend it. Then finally, we're going to see what the content flow we're going to build today is going to look like. So go to the stages. Stages in HighGraph are just two. You create a new project, you see two distinct stages. Draft. And draft is the default stage where everything lives. If you create a piece of content and you click save, that's where it goes to. No matter what you do, draft is always going to be there. It might not be published, it might not be live, it might not be in review, but it will be in draft. If it's not in draft, then you're never going to see that again. So it's there, it's used by all roles, and this is the base version of the content. The other stage that we have out of the box is called published. And this is basically the stage that we treat as live, right? For HighGraph, this is the live stage. If you publish something to published, in hindsight, we probably should have named that live. Yeah. Doesn't matter.
Yep.
The published stage is where we treat content as live. If you go there, then the content is supposed to be there. Now, the cool thing about the published stage is that you can shape that stage to be accessible to different user groups. And if we go further now, and we probably should have seen the, oh, okay, so this is what we're going to introduce actually. The published stage is the live one. The idea today is to have something in between the draft and the published stage where we can ensure that the content is quality assured and it goes through an approval workflow. So this editor approval stage is the one that we're going to create today. It's custom, it doesn't exist out of the box, and it is the thing that's going to keep, let's say, not perfect content from getting to a live stage.
My favorite thing is you keep saying it's not there out of the box, but the functionality to make it is there out of the box, which is nice.
That's exactly the thing that we're going to get to. Cool. So how do we control the stages? Because introducing new stages, that's easy. But just by introducing stages, you're not really creating a workflow. You're just adding different, well, I'm looking for a synonym of the word stage, but different stages for the content to exist in.
Yep.
Sorry, non-native speaker here. I don't know all the bells and whistles. So, but the thing is, like, stages are there to show you at which point of its existence the content is in, right? It can be in draft, approval, meaning it's waiting for something, and published, meaning it's live.
Which the nice thing is, you can, without roles and permissions, you can still do that. It's just you can't limit things at that point.
Correct. That's exactly the thing. And we're actually going to see that in action once we get to the demo part before we start putting everything together. So in order to actually enforce a particular stage to be used, you have to wrap that stage in a custom user group, or how we call that in HighGraph. That's a role. So before we go to that custom role, let's take a look at what are the out-of-the-box roles that you get from the platform, because in a lot of cases, those are going to suffice what you're actually building. So first we have an admin. This is, think of that as the gold mode of the platform. You can do anything you want there, including billing, including inviting new users, creating new roles, like everything. It's there. The next one is a developer. This is a bit of a lower tier of an admin because a developer can still create a lot of or manage a lot of the things related to a project, like the schema, like different applications, how you can connect webhooks, stuff like that, but they can't control the project, meaning they cannot manage users, they cannot create new roles, stuff like that. The next two roles that we have are specifically around content editing. And the first one, the contributor, is what we usually treat as the junior editor in the platform. The idea there is that a contributor can only create content in a draft stage, right? That's it. They cannot publish, they cannot move anything to live, they can just create drafts. The editor, on the other hand, out of the box, basically acts as the, let's call them the editor-in-chief or the chief editor of the website, where they can log in, take something that the contributor did, and publish it to live. Now, that's great and all, but in a lot of cases, the contributor also, well, not in a lot of cases, the contributor itself is also quite limited in what they can do. And in some situations, you might need something that's a bit of a hybrid role between a contributor and editor, where you still need to be able to create drafts. You can still, let's say, add new languages, stuff like that, but you don't want to be able to publish live. And this is where the junior editor role that we're going to create today comes into play. This is a custom role that we're going to create with the platform, which will serve that exact purpose. They will only be able to publish to that review stage that we're going to create and not go any further. If they do that, somebody else will need to come in and move the content to another stage.
And I'll mention real fast, by default in the free version, the community version, or whatever we're calling the free version nowadays, you get admin and editor. So that top and that bottom one, which is what most basic projects need. It's when
Yeah.
you need these bigger things that then the paid ones start getting these 4, and then we also have custom roles as well.
Yeah, that's a very good clarification there. Cool.
There's another bullet point. I missed it. There it is. Yeah.
We already talked over that, so it's fine. You can move to the next one. So this is basically a visualization of how the content flow will work. If you click next, we're probably going to see a timeline. Yeah. So, okay, the content will go through several stages. The first one is draft, and this is where the junior editor will be able to save their content, and they will be able to submit that content to the next stage, which is editor approval, meaning at this point, somebody from the senior editorial staff will need to come in and approve or discard this content and either move it to published or unpublish it from review. And then finally, the publish stage, where several different, let's say, roles can actually play out, the editor and the admin. And the only thing that you can do once content is there is just unpublish it. That's it. Cool. Do we want to actually build this now?
I think that would be great. I love practical things.
Perfect. All right, cool. So I believe now we should be looking at my screen, or at least I hope so.
Yep, we got
cool.
there.
So we're not going to start from scratch. One thing I want to mention, we already have a pre-built project. We're going to use the doc starter that we have in the platform. This is one of our starter projects, and it has a very concise and simple schema that we can use for our editorial workflow. So the first thing we're going to see is that if, let's say, we create a new page, and let's say give it a name, probably need to give it a slug as well. Do we have anything else required? No? Perfect. We can save that page, right? That works. And we can also just hit publish, and this will automatically say that we are publishing this stage to the publish stage. That is the out-of-the-box state of the platform that you're going to get. So how do we go about enhancing this and adding another custom stage? Well, as we are currently logged in as an admin, it's going to be quite easy. We're just going to go to project settings here, and we're going to go to our content stages area, and you're going to see that we have our base stage, draft, and our destination stages listed, and the list is quite short now because we only have the out-of-the-box one, so we need to add a new one. The add stage button probably has something to do with that, so let's click it and see what happens. We need to add a new stage, and I believe we call that editor approval, if I'm not mistaken. We're gonna add, let's say, purple.
Yeah,
Brian, you call the color.
Let's go purple. Purple's always good.
Purple. Okay, perfect. So let's say this is going to be approval stage for quality assurance. Cool. Now, of course, this is going to be added after published, and it shouldn't be there. So let's actually make it right and make it right. All right, cool. Second time is a charm. Perfect. So now we have the 3 stages. We have draft, base version. We have the editor approval, where we're going to publish, so things need to be approved. And then we have published. Perfect. Now, what happens if we now go ahead and try to do the same thing with our test page? If we, again, click publish, this time, we're actually going to be prompted with where do we want to publish this to, whether it's going to be live, as in published, or is it going to be editor approval. So again, as an admin, I can do anything. But the thing is, right now, even if I wasn't an admin, I would still be able to do that because we only have the stages. So how do we ensure that that stage is enforced? This is where the custom roles come into play. So again, we're going to head to project settings now. We're going to head to our roles and permissions. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to do a bit of a role play. So I'm actually going to invite Brian here as a junior editor in a second.
Excellent.
First, we need to control to create the role. He's going to submit something to be approved. But first, let's go ahead and create our custom role. We're going to add that. We're going to name this junior editor. and hit create. Once that's done, we can now go in and start configuring everything. Now, several things we need to do when we're talking about custom roles. The first one is configure the content permissions. This is basically dictating what that role will be able to do with the content itself, right? And just to show you the basics, we're going to add permissions. We're going to say that for all models, they'll be able to read everything, right? We want to do that. We want to allow them to read everything and read all the versions. Perfect. We're going to allow them to create everything. We're going to allow them to update everything. And we're going to stop there because everything else is supposed to be a part of the more senior roles.
I saw you hover over delete for a second. I'm like, don't let the junior editor delete.
Probably not a good idea. Cool. So now what we want to do is enhance this a bit, specifically with the page model. So we're going to add a permission for page, where we're going to say they can publish pages, but they will only be able to publish from draft to editor approval. Now, the cool thing here is that this is a very simple scenario, right? We're currently just creating a one-step approval workflow where there is a stage where somebody needs to go in and assure that everything is right. You could do something that's a lot more complicated than that. The permission system allows you to basically restrict a whole lot more than just the stages. I can say, if I had multiple languages, for example, I can say that a particular role will only be able to publish in a particular language. So if, let's say, you have a multi-country or multilingual platform that you're building, you will be able to have different roles for different user groups for different regions, and you will be able to segregate the content between them so that they can go to basically only work with their region. They won't be able to interfere with anyone else's work, which is something that's extremely powerful. But what's even more impressive is you can go to the custom conditions here, where you can specify things with, okay, they can publish whatever, but they will only be able to publish, let's say, pages that have title that contains, this is going to be a surprise, Bryan is the coolest.
Heck yeah.
And if that doesn't exist there, they will not be able to publish it. No, we're not going to be that bad. So
because there wouldn't be any pages to say that. That's an inaccurate statement. So,
well,
who is to say?
That's the requirement.
Yep.
If they don't have it, they won't be able to publish it. So, all right, let's hit create. And if everything is right, we should be good with the content permissions. And Bryan should now be able to create a new page and publish it to an editor page. Once I invite you. But first, this is where one of our gotchas come into play. And this is where you need to tweak a bit the management API as well. So the idea for the management API permission configuration in the custom roles is that in here you can basically control the interface that the role will be able to interact with. So things like whether they'll be able to see the schema, the API playground, whether they'll be able to see, let's say, the edit entry button to add new entries, stuff like that. And even though you might have added those permissions in the content section, if you haven't added the button to do that, the only way they'll be able to do it is through the API, which is not ideal. So let's show all permissions, and the way I usually like to do that is just look for entries and just scroll through them. So we want to update published entries. We want to create new entries. Read existing entries we have. Update non-published entries. Today, please. There we go. Delete existing entries. We don't want to have that.
Nope.
Cool. And publish non-published entries. Move. There we go. I believe this is all of them. Yes. Perfect. All right. So this is basically our current junior editor role. So what we need to do now is invite Bryan to it and see how it looks like on his screen. So first, I will need Bryan to somehow give me his HighGraph mail because I don't know it by heart. Sorry.
It's this name right here with a dot in between @highgraph.com.
Do you have your family name in it?
Yep.
All right, cool.
I'm a late enough joiner to high graph that I didn't get the
Okay.
first one.
All right. Is it the double B or a single
Just
B?
single. Yep, right here.
All right. Highgraph.com. There we go. And you're gonna be a junior editor.
Junior editor.
And if you do a good enough work here, I'm gonna promote you to an editor.
Promotions.
Yeah.
Does that come with more money?
No.
Ah,
Actually, you'll have to give me money to do that. But I also take beers, so it's fine.
that works. All right. So
Cool.
let me share that
So
tab.
you're invited, and now
And here we are on my screen.
Perfect. All right, cool. So the first thing that you're going to see is that some things are missing. You don't have the API playground. You don't have the schema, which is a very good thing because we were just discussing before this started that the schema hiding doesn't work. It works now. Cool.
It does work. And the great thing about that is me as a junior editor, that's a super confusing thing to have there. And then I click on it and not be able to do anything and be even more confused.
Yeah, absolutely. But fortunately for you, it's quite simple now. So as a junior editor, I'm going to challenge you to create a new page.
New page. I can do this. I can do this. All right.
Shouldn't be the best.
The best. Yeah, that's a fair point. I have the H in there.
There we go. Perfect.
So I'm going to save and publish this, right?
Try it. Let's see what happens. I mean, you can go and try ahead and published.
I'm a hacker by nature, Niki. Failed to save, publish. Please try again later.
Now, granted, we probably should have a better message here, and I think we do have a better message in Classic, which still hasn't been migrated to Studio, but this is due to insufficient permissions. So let's try this again and publish to editor approval. Okay, let's try and save it, and I'm going to assume I failed to add some permissions there.
All right, so let's switch back to your screen and debug that.
Yeah, let's try it. Cool. So this is where relationships come into play, and you might need to have permissions for one or more parts of the things that the page references. And in this
case, have chapters and SEO, I believe.
Yeah. However, I don't think that should be a problem because you can read everything, you can create everything, and you can update everything. So that shouldn't be a problem. And we can publish pages. Okay, let's add the permissions to publish for SEO, again, from draft to editor approval. And for, what was it? Navigation and chapter, I guess?
Just so you know, Niki, and I've been testing on my screen behind the scenes. I think that was a leftover error from the permissions error that I got.
Okay, so
publishing.
You managed to save it?
Yes, it is. It is in editor approval. Let me switch back to mine.
Oh, okay, perfect.
And we can see that we are now in editor approval for Sean Connery is the best.
Perfect. All right, perfect. So now, if me as an admin, I go to the content section here, I'm going to see that there is something that is currently in editor approval. And one thing that I like to usually do is add a particular filter where I'm filtering by the stage, and I want to have something like the approval pages saved. So I will usually save a new view that is approval queue. So if I have that, every single time I go into the platform, I'll see all the content that is waiting to be approved. So now if I go in, I can see that Sean Connery is the best, which perfect. That looks good. We don't have any content, but that's fine.
I like how I specifically put things in here for you to be like, oh, we shouldn't have that many exclamation marks, junior editor. You're terrible. But that's me.
We haven't reached that point yet.
Oh, sorry. I'm skipping ahead.
But yes, you're right. I can actually change that. We can remove everything. But hey, you know what? You probably should have some content here because this is not the best. But since it's not the best, I'm actually going to save that. And I'm going to say, I'm going to unpublish from editor approval. And you need to go in and fix that. So again, we can jump through the same hoop, do the same thing. But before we do that, I think we should do a bit of an enhancement here, because we did that. That's perfect. But the only way I will know that this content has been submitted for approval is if I jump into the platform and I check my approval queue view, right? Which is not ideal. So in a lot of cases, our workflow in HighGraph is pretty much set. That's fine. But you might want to enhance that. There are several different ways you can do that. One of the things you can do, and this is something that actually comes out of the box, is in Classic, we had those comments and tagging options. That's coming to Studio as well. It's just not there yet. But if you or me as an approver, I wanted to communicate something to you, actually, let's switch to Classic for a second here. There we go.
For those not know, Classic being our old interface, Studio being the new beta interface that we're still working on a few last things in.
So if we go to that same page in Classic, I have this comment section here. So I can do something like @Bryan, please add content, right? And what that will do is, first, you're going to get an email. And second, in your notifications bar here, or notification section, you're going to see the dot thingy there that you need to do something. Now, since currently we can't do that from Studio, we're going to pretend that that doesn't exist. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to wrap our workflow in one additional layer where we can notify people via an external app. And for that app, we're going to use Slack. And in order for us to use Slack, we need to do something to notify Slack that something happened. And the way we're going to do that is via a webhook. So in here, we're going to configure a new webhook that is going to monitor our page model. So we're going to name this our approval webhook. We're going to include payloads. And this is going to be a post webhook, the URL, through the magic of being prepared.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to copy from another place. Now, a disclaimer here, we are using a service called Zapier for this because they have an out-of-the-box integration with Slack and a bunch of other platforms that you can use. But the idea is that this will be called as soon as we publish something to the approval stage, and then that webhook will send a message in our Slack so we can see that something has been published. The remaining thing we need to do is configure the trigger for this, or how is this webhook going to be, started. So the first thing is the model we're going to monitor is the page, right? Because this is what we want to follow. This is what we want to approve. This is exactly where we want to have our eyes on. The second thing is, what stage are we monitoring? And Bryan, what would you say that's going to be?
It seems like we'd want to monitor editor approval.
You're absolutely correct. So as soon as something happens to the editor approval stage, what should that thing be? Probably publish. We want to get that webhook. Now, the last thing that we have here is the sources, and this is where you would want to filter things like automation. So if you have a batch submission processes, you probably don't want to have webhooks call for all of those little thingies. So what I like to do is limit this to project members, meaning if somebody within the project publishes something to editor approval, then I want to have that webhook called. And that's basically it. As soon as we add that webhook, and fingers crossed that this actually works, if now Bryan goes in and submits something to the approval queue, we should be able to see a message pop up here in my Slack.
So,
can you share both screens at the same time?
I don't think I can. No, I cannot. Click the button to see if maybe I could. But what we can do is I will behind the scenes make my change.
All right.
So I'm going in, and I know that the email I got said this needs content. So I will put my content in, and I will save and publish. I will go to the editor approval stage and click save and publish. And now it is sent.
And lo and behold, what we just got is that Sean Connery's The Best page has just been published to approval, meaning we need to go in and review that. So one way you can notify your senior editorial staff. So now that Bryan has actually done this, well, what we can do is we can go into that particular record, and since we now have content, I'm more than happy to actually publish this. So I can just hit the publish button and I can go and publish this to live. At the same time, I might want to unpublish it from editor approval. And if you don't want to do that manually, you can have a webhook that does that. Same way we set that webhook. As soon as something goes to published or live, remove it from approval. That's it. There we go. That is all the magic behind workflows and HighGraph.
Magic, including using an external system too, which was on our, it was a stretch goal for the stream. And maybe we'll show Slack. Maybe that'll be a thing that we do. And I will show, just so everyone can see what you were talking about before, in Classic and at some point in the near future in Studio. You can see here, I've got my notifications. It shows that Niki has actually submitted this please add content, and I have it over in my email as well. So all of that is there and ready for me so that I can then submit to Niki again.
Yeah. Pretty powerful.
Yeah. All that literally in 30 minutes, right? And, well, with some banter at the beginning there too. So not a whole lot.
Well, again, this is a very simple scenario. It gets a bit more complicated if you have a more complex schema, but the gist of it is this, right? You don't need a whole lot more in order to configure the whole thing.
In kind of your experience in looking at some more complex stuff, what are a few of the additional things that people often do? Like, to me, if I gave my juniors like all access to draft and editor approval for all models, I'd be perfectly content, because again, I'm not doing a whole lot of heavy lifting. But like, what's the next augmentation or the next limitation that we introduce?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. And the reason why we did the read all, was because it's the easiest way we can just handle this particular demo. Now, again, this is a very simple schema. We have just a couple of models, but the thing is, like, all of them currently are interlinked. So if I, let's say, wanted to just give them access to the page, that wouldn't exactly be possible, because a page has a reference to the navigation, it has a reference to the chapters, to the SEO, pretty much everything is all together. Now, in a lot of larger projects, the schema can have, I like to call them clusters of models that are bundled together, right? And for junior editors, usually you only give them access to some of those clusters. Like, let's say that this is one of our clusters for the pages, right? This is everything that they're going to be able to do. So the way you will go about this is that for every single content type here, like SEO, page, navigation, external link, and chapter, you would have that exact same permission set for every single one of them, meaning it wouldn't be for all models, it would be for page, for SEO, for navigation, for link, and what was the last one? Yeah. The reason behind this is that while you still want to give them relative freedom to do their job, you might want to restrict certain parts of the system to them. It might be sensitive information, it might be that you just don't want to overburden them. But the idea is the platform can lets you configure that as granular as you want.
And like, there could be multiple use cases for the content too. So like, while you might be editing the pages over here, or let's say like articles over here, the articles then get placed in certain areas that you don't have control over. Your layout specialist or your architect or whatever is managing where it actually flows through the content, and they're building pages over here using the content that is what you have access to. Yeah,
that's actually a very good example as well.
Nice. I do want to open the door just in case anyone who's watching has any questions. We typically don't get huge amounts of questions. I know we got some people watching right now. So if you have any questions for Niki about this, or really any other HighGraph questions, we're here for you. I'll also go ahead and throw out my little call to action to say that we are also here for you in the community, which is slack.highgraph.com. I'm in there as our product managers, some of our engineers, the CEO every once in a while pops in and answers a question. So do hit up that Slack group if you have any questions about HighGraph going forward. And usually I would say everything you've seen here is available on the free plan, but that's not actually true. But you can still go sign up and create and at least see how some of this might flow in some of these project stages as well.
The good thing is, like, right now you can actually do a trial, and that trial will give you access to all of that. So while it's not free, you can play around with it.
Exactly. You get a little bit of time. You figure out if it's right for you, and you're good to go. Cool. Well, I don't see any comments coming through right now. So any parting shots from you on any of this, Niki?
I think I'm good. I think we showed all the nooks and crannies here, so go wild.
Yeah, exactly. Lot of ground covered in a very short amount of time. So I appreciate you spending the time with us today.
No worries. Hopefully this was actually useful.
I think it'll be useful. And the great thing is I always love the ones that then like various other team members can just take the YouTube video and send out to people. Like that's the great thing for me. It's like you shouldn't have to do this in every sales meeting, right? You shouldn't have to go in and show this off. Now we have it and we'll just send it to people.
The interesting thing is I actually have a recording of this and I was contemplating, hey, should I show up or maybe just play the recording on background?
You know, nowadays in StreamYard, what we use, I've got a button to just play videos. So like you could have just sent that. I could have played the video and we could have, grabbed coffee.
You could have said that. Well, next time.
Live is fun too. Let's do it live. All right. Well, Niki, thanks so much. And everyone watching, keep doing awesome things.
Cheers, guys.